As always, we had loads of problems with getting the camera in the water. I actually went to the shoot 3 days in advance, laid all the cable in the water, so all we had to do was connect up the cameras. And as is always the case, we had problems and the cameras weren't working properly, we weren't getting the correct signal. During all of this, we've got fish of this sort of size and bigger swimming around the spot, literally waiting to be filmed, and we couldn't get any footage at all. Fortunately, between us, we managed to get the camera kit working, and then what we did was left the camera without any rig in the water for a couple of days with food in the swim, so we could actually film these fish getting their confidence up, because they definitely got more confident the longer they were in the spot, and certainly as you can see from now, they're not camera shy at all. Now, as is always the case, the commentary you're going to get from myself and from Damien is just going to be our opinion on things. It's not the gospel, it's not the truth, it's just our slant on it. And you may watch it and think completely different things and fish a completely different way, and that's fine. That's what the films are for, is to spark some thought and some interest in people. And we're both convinced, Damien and myself, that there is a lot more that we can do to get more bites. We don't actually know what it is yet, but we're pretty convinced that things will emerge as a result of these films which will put more fish on the bank. What we're going to do as well is swap back to some live commentary in the bivvy as this sort of stuff's happening, because you can imagine how exciting it is to watch fish of this sort of size, upper 20s, low 30s, even upper 30s in the swim feeding. So we're going to bring you some of that live footage to give you a sense of just what it feels like to see it happening at that moment. One thing we noticed about the fish's behaviour, bearing in mind these are much bigger fish. That fish in the foreground there we're estimating at 35 plus. The fish in the background is definitely an upper 20, and they're moving around the swim a hell of a lot slower than we've seen in the other films. Just being a lot more picky, taking more time, and we've noticed that different fish feed in different ways. If you pay particular attention to how much their mouth's open, how close they are to the lake bed, that kind of thing, we think every fish has got its own unique way of feeding. They may only be very slight differences, but they are differences, and they're things to look out for. What we think is that all the fish have got their own unique way of avoiding getting caught. Some are better at it than others, and these are probably the fish that don't get caught very often in the lake. We've basically fed the swim with a mixture of sticky baits, pellets, fusion boilies from mainline, and also the proactive boilies from mainline. One thing we noticed, and something you'll see later on in the film, is the greater the competition for food, the more aggressive the fish feed. Something we've all known before, but it really does bring it home to you when you see one fish in the swim feeding and just being very careful and very slow and very picky, and then you get 4 or 5 in the swim feeding and they're basically going for any bit of food they can possibly find. See the fish there spooking off of a boilie. We really think these fish are very spooky of round baits, and you'll see during the film that, you know, there are several times when they go down for a round boilie and then avoid it at the last moment, because after all they've been caught on round boilies for years and years and years. I think it's not the fact that they don't want to eat the food, it's the fact that they're scared of the shape of it, and that's why I think the pellets work so well, because they break down and they change their shape and they break up. It's much harder for the fish to be aware of exactly what shape they are. Also, we never fish with tiny pellets on the hair. we've always got a boilie over the top so they can feed on pellets generally and have no fear of getting caught. Well, I think we've given these fish a free lunch for long enough. It's time to get on with the job in hand, and that's make part 5 of state-of-the-art underwater carp fishing. Let's get a rig in the water.